Okay, hi folks. Welcome. My name is Chris Bryans. It's good to have you guys here for part 2 of history of 60s music. And those of you that were here for the first part of this a couple of months ago now, you know, if it were me, I would probably have a little bit of trouble remembering now what exactly was part 1. You know, what was that all about? So just a little bit of a refresher. Really fly through this. So what we're looking at is the fact that music changes from the early 40s to the 50s, from unionized professionals to amateurs, people who could read music, some of which could write music, big bands, to people who all you had to do is know 3 chords on a guitar and you could make $1 million, right? Whether you did it solo like Elvis or whether you did it in a group like the Beatles. And we saw that popular music, and this is what we're going to see in the second part, shifts from being just fun and entertainment and dance music to leaders who were musicians who really saw music as a way to get people to think and for social change. And so that's a thing that we're going to be talking a lot about too. We saw that there was a musician strike that banned recording by bands, but it didn't apply to vocalists. So the vocalists then became more or less front and center. And you can see this over here in these 2 recordings that Frank Sinatra did. And one of them, it's Harry James that's up front, and the other one, it is Frank Sinatra. They're exactly the same record. All they did was switch the labels. That's right. And of course, World War II, right? The Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy of Company B. Musicians went to war. Glenn Miller's whole band went into the Army. He became captain, and then later Major Glenn Miller, the Army Air Force's band, before he disappeared on a flight in December 1944, never seen again. He's probably, you know, in the Bermuda Triangle someplace. We'll probably see him one of these days. He'll be the same age as when he crashed, because he didn't. But what this does is it takes the big bands out of the equation, more or less, and they are replaced by smaller combos. Electrification helps out. Now you have electric guitars, and if this thing wasn't electric, you couldn't hear me if this was a big ballroom. So they electrify it, and boy, things really begin to take off. You have smaller combos, as we said, like the Nat King Cole Trio. You know, a guitar, a bass, a piano, and you're all set. And you can travel, you're flexible, right? And, you know, that's all you need. And, of course, there's radio, small radios. You guys remember the little transistor radios? Yeah, and my first memory was on the day JFK was assassinated. First time I ever saw a transistor radio. 6th graders down the hall there listening to the reports. But the rise of the DJ kind of coincides with the power of radio to produce big hits. If you were a DJ, you could actually make someone a star just by playing their songs over and over and over again. And now you can take your music with you. But 2, there's the baby boom, right? You know, what happens when all of a sudden 16 million men come home after being a couple of years gone, right? Yeah, all right, you know, enough said, right, George? You have the baby boom, and with that, you have the power of teenagers, because by the time that the late 50s, early 60s would begin to take place, you would have teenagers who are making money. They've got jobs, right? And because they get to keep the money, because the economy is booming all over the United States, look at what they're able to buy. So now teenagers are big business, right? And if you're a record producer, there's your audience. And you're going to make millions for yourself. You're going to make millions for a lot of folks. So television too would come along. And like American Bandstand and Dick Clark, right? Yes. And of course there was also the man up there who could do nothing else but stand there. He had no neck, right? Ed Sullivan with his really big shoe. You know, tonight on this stage for you, tonight on this stage, we bring to you tonight for you on this stage for you tonight, right? And so he showcased, really, in a sense, if you were a musician, you went on the Ed Sullivan Show, your career was sewn up for life because everybody watched it on Sunday nights. It was a family show because there was something for everyone, right? And of course, musicians, you watch Ed Sullivan Show. As a matter of fact, there's MeTV, and there's another channel, and every Sunday night, you've probably seen it, every Sunday night, Ed Sullivan's Rock and Roll. Why? Because everybody who was a rock and roll star would eventually appear on the Ed Sullivan Show. And so if we look at music, rock and roll begins actually with blues and rhythm and blues, even though if you're African American, you don't really get a fair shot, right? So, you know, you got, of course, Bill Haley and the Comets come along, Elvis Presley. You have in Britain working class music called skiffle. Remember I told you about, you know, how do you put a skiffle band together? Real simple. You get a couple of guitars. You have a guy take a tea chest, a wooden tea chest, put a broom handle in the middle, attach some strings to it, now you have a bass. And for additional rhythm, you don't have a drum, no problem, get yourself a washboard. And the washboard did the trick, and this was skiffle. And one skiffle band that became very popular started out with a couple of guys, one of whose name was John Lennon. And later on, young Paul McCartney came in and joined the band. Then he brought a guy named George Harrison, a school friend of his. And then later on, well, you know the rest of the story, right? So there's a lot of folk influence too, as we know. I played for you a skiffle song, and skiffle was kind of like using a lot of country songs that have been popular even as far back as the 20s, and moving those songs forward and turning them into hits. And then, of course, we have Bob Dylan, who, in a sense, he's got a voice that sounds a lot like just regular people's voices. Right? Bob Dylan does not have a trained voice, and he uses folk, which is what more American genre of music than folk. And folk uses a lot of harmonica, right, Doug? Exactly. And so there he was. He's got this harmonica up here, and he's got a folk guitar, and he is speaking to the consciences of America. So, in 1964, we know on the Ed Sullivan Show, Ed Sullivan hired a band to come in and play without even hearing a note of their music. But he knew how popular they were in Britain, and so he brought them along. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I am missing, and hope that my dreams will come true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true. Thank you very much, Will from Liverpool. So, you know, great song, and of course, the parents listen. I thought, well, that doesn't actually sound so bad, singing this really beautiful ballad. But of course, as time goes on, we see with the British invasion. All right. So bands, of course, if you recall, how did the Beatles dress when they were up there in the Ed Sullivan Show? Suits and ties. And what did they do after each song? It's so cute. What did they do? They bow to the audience. Can you imagine folks doing that now? Well, maybe some do. I mean, really, really. You know, so the parents probably said, well, these are really well-behaved people, well-behaved kids. Yeah, right. Okay. But we do know, of course, songs at this period of time were pretty conservative, right? The 50s and the 60s. Generally, love ended at the altar, didn't it? Wait a minute, that didn't sound right. Let me try to rephrase that. It kind of continued at the altar, right? People got married. Yes, they were in love and when they got married. So even some of the biggest rock and roll songs like Dizzy Miss Lizzy, which of course the Beatles also did, Girl, I Want to Marry You. And we also know Going to the
Chapel
and
we're gonna get married.
Right, so you see that, right? This is really important to understand because that is going to change. That is going to change as the 60s begin to develop. But at this particular period of time, when we go into maybe 1965, 1966, there are some transitions. There are some lyrical transitions. There are some musical transitions too. But a lot of pop songs were still very melodic for the older generation to enjoy. Right? If you think about it, Sinatra and Dean Martin are still making hits in 1964, 65. Right? That's Life, Sinatra did that, and Strangers in the Night, right? Dean Martin does Houston, you know, the song Houston and others. But you can tell that in 1965, you can see the seeds of some change coming along. A young man by the name of Barry McGuire, 1965, did a song that the left-wing Students for Democratic Society listened to and thought, wow, this is profound. At a time when songs were, love, dancing, dating, cars were coming out, Barry McGuire comes out with this song that to me could have been written yesterday. You might recognize it, Eve of Destruction. Yes. Did you say that, Don? You get a prize. Don't call me, I'll get it to you eventually. The Eastern world, is exploding, violence flaring, bullets loading. You're old enough to kill, but not provoke. You don't believe in war, but what's that gun you're toting? And even the Jordan River has bodies floating. But you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, I don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the fears that I'm feeling today? If the button is pushed, there's no running away. There'll be no one to save with the world in a grave. Take a look around you, boy, it's bound to scare you, boy. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, I don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Here's your part there, Doug. Yeah, my blood's so mad, feels like coagulating. I'm sitting here just contemplating. You can't twist the truth, it knows no regulation. And a handful of senators don't pass legislation, and marchers alone can't bring integration. When human respect is disintegrating, this whole crazy world is just too frustrating. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend. Pretty contemporary, huh? Yeah, what goes around comes around. And even, of course, even the Beatles began to write songs that, were to get people to thinking about real people and real problems and real issues. And one of them that came out did not even use any of the band, except of course the vocals. And it was based on a headstone in the churchyard that Paul McCartney saw with the name Eleanor Rigby. Oh, look at all the lonely people. Oh, look at all the lonely people. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing a face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? Father Mackenzie, writing the words of a sermon that no one will hear. No one comes near, look at him working, donning his socks in the night when there's nobody there. What does he care? All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? Ah, look at all the lonely people. Ah, look at all the lonely people. All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? Different kind of a song, huh? You know, they were really pace setters and, you know, identifying real heartaches of real people. You know, that's one of the differences that's starting to occur. But I want to talk for a second about why the radical musical change is even taking place in the first place. Well, what's going on, to paraphrase Marvin Gaye, right? Well, for one thing, the baby boom. It is young people that are more or less becoming the majority of society. You probably remember the saying at this period of time in the mid to late 60s, never trust anyone over 25. Well, that's pretty radical too. I heard it was over 30. But yeah, you were running with a really young crowd, JoJo. And so we have to think about that. We have to think about the fact that we had more college attendance than at any time in our history. And of course that was creating other questions that folks are asking. The civil rights movement was in full swing beginning in the 50s. In the same year that Elvis was recording, Rosa Parks refused to move back, and the first shot was fired, right? So rock and roll was just being born, and the civil rights movement was really launching into full swing too. So, and of course with television, you could see all of this brought into your 6 o'clock news. You mentioned, of course, the Vietnam War, Doug, which was part of Cold War tensions going back to even Korea, both of which you were part of. But again, these Cold War tensions, there was tremendous fear, like we talked about in the song that Barry Maguire wrote, "On the Eve of Destruction," right? It's just basically if the bomb goes off, there's nobody that's going to be saved with the world in a grave. And there was tremendous fear, and we came this close in 1962. You know better than I do. What happened during what event? Cuban Missile Crisis, which of course the Bay of Pigs was a component of that. Cashner was afraid we were going to do it again, so he went to the Big Bear for help, right? Had the Bay of Pigs not happened, maybe the Cuban Missile Crisis wouldn't have happened either. But it was this close, and we now know, because of all the declassified documents, how close we came to ending it all in an afternoon. And folks are beginning to realize this too. And so in Cold War tensions, you have movies coming out like this, like Dr. Strangelove and others, right? Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, right? That was the subtitle. But people were afraid and wondering, do we really have to live with this? Do we have to live with the constant threat of blowing ourselves up? And of course, traditions too. The traditions, in a sense, were under threat. Folks were asking questions about whether or not all these traditions that we had were actually necessary for human happiness. And that's when you begin to have traditional values. This isn't the first time they'll be questioned. This goes back hundreds of years, but you really see it played out in society, on the streets, in the media. And traditions are going to be challenged. Art and music, of course, is going to reflect this. So what we see in art and music is what we'll experience in society and vice versa. When you ask, does society influence the content of art and music? Of course it does. You know that better than I do. But also it's vice versa. Art and music also further influences society. Can you imagine listening to Eleanor Rigby when it first came out and thinking, wow, I just thought about my grandmother. She's so lonely. I think I'm going to give her a call. Imagine thinking that when you're listening to Eleanor Rigby. Or, I think I want to do something. I want to go visit people. I want to get close to lonely people, young and old. And so this is a song that initiates change. And you can see how every single one of these, that's why I have them all here tied together, is all of them are influencing one another. Traditions are challenged, and so because of that, folks are asking, why, just because his skin is black, can't he come to my school? Why can't he come to this concert? And so you see civil rights, music, right? I'm in the army with this person there who, and you were there, Doug, when integration was more or less in swing. The military was the very first to integrate, 1948. President Harry Truman. And so, all of this is kind of happening at the same time, and it's no wonder there's radical music change that's actually taking place. Beginning in 1967. Starting out, of course, with an album that just by looking at its cover, something is going on. You guys remember the cover to Sgt. Pepper's? I'll show it to you if you don't. Let's see. There we go. Right there. Holy smokes, right? They did this on purpose. Basically, it was a way to remove themselves from who they were. They were, in a sense, they were the Beatles, but they weren't the Beatles. And that's why they're wearing the disguises. And so they created an album. They stopped touring because they wanted to be creative again. They wanted to really get creative, and they couldn't do it while touring. It was wearing them out. So they went into the studios, and for 6 months, nobody really heard a whole lot of them until this album came out in June 1967 and changed pretty much everything. And of course, the one song everybody knows, and I don't think I'm going to have time to play, is the song that was on the album. Everybody thinks it was about drugs because of its initials. Lucy. That's right. You're thinking, it stands for LSD. Well, yes and no. They were experimenting, but that's not what the song was about. The song was actually inspired by John Lennon's son, who was only 5 years old. He brings home a picture of a school friend named Lucy. I can't remember what his name was, McDonald, Lucy something. But he said, well, what is this, Jules? He said, this is my friend, this is my school chum, Lucy, in the sky with diamonds. And so John Lennon, who was very, very much fond of Lewis Carroll and his fantasy kinds of things there, wrote this song about the ultimate fantasy world. Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Rocking horse people eat marshmallow pies, things like that, right? But fact of the matter, though, people were experimenting with drugs. That was another change, and you did find its way into music, psychedelic music, basically music that was meant to be listened to while you were on drugs. But the purpose of drugs at this period of time was a little bit different. The reason that why did people, maybe some of you know already, why did people use acid? What were they trying to do? Escape, but go where? Yeah. Some will want any place but in country, right? Any place but non. Well, the idea was to try to find truth inside your own head. Remember I said traditions were being questioned, broken down, everything. And so if you have no outside sources, whether it's politics or church or family or anything that you can trust anymore, then where do you find truth? Inside your head. There was never a song like this until Janis Ian made it a big hit. And if you listen to the original, you can tell that her voice is it's beautiful, but it's very girlish. Oh, baby, face is clean and shining black as night. My mother went to answer, you know that you look so fine. Now I could understand your tears and your shame. She called you boy instead of your name. When she wouldn't let you inside. When she turned and said, but honey, she's not our kind. She says, I can't see you anymore, baby. Can't see you anymore. Walk me down to school, baby. Everybody's acting deaf and blind, until they turn and say, why don't you stick to your own kind? My teachers all laugh, their smirking stares, cutting deep down in our affairs. Preachers of equality think they believe it, why don't they just let us be? They say, I can't see you anymore, baby. Can't see you anymore. One of these days I'm gonna stop my list and gonna raise my head up high. One of these days I'm gonna raise my glistening wings and fly. You wouldn't have heard a song like this. It would have been banned from the airwaves, really. But now people are beginning to listen and even relate to it. She wasn't the only one. Of course, in Detroit has a nickname. They call it the Motor City. Another nickname for it would be Motown. That's right, Motown. On Motown Records, under the leadership of Berry Gordy, is producing their own set of hit makers, the Supremes and Marvin Gaye. And in 1970, Marvin Gaye wants to put out an album in 1970-71, and this album contains a couple of songs that Berry Gordy doesn't want to do. He doesn't want him to do because they're a little bit too controversial. Because Berry Gordy's philosophy is, I want music for everybody. I don't want protest music or anything like that. I want music that everybody is going to want to listen to. And well, these, and you can kind of tell why, but these songs became such classics that they kind of not only resonated back then, but they resonate today. And other artists on the 50th anniversary of this recording have recorded these couple of songs. One of them, of course, you'll recognize, What's Going On, which is about protest. But the other one is nicknamed the Ecology Song. And when you listen to Mercy, Mercy Me, when you listen to some of the background, kind of like, boo, boo, sounds like somebody recorded it next to a racquetball court or something like that, you know. But because, you know, of the background rhythm. In any case, this song, the Ecology Song, I mean, that would never have been a song that you would have heard before either. Not in the 50s, not in the 40s, because the word really had not gotten around until 1962, when a woman named Rachel Carson got a letter from a friend of hers saying that, you know, I don't hear the birds in this spring. The birds seem to be silent. And so she, being a scientist herself, decided to go out and investigate, and she discovered some things. Remember what she found out? DDT came along, yes, and she wrote DDT sprayed eventually got into the environment, and birds, of course, would eat the plants that ate, you know, what was poisoned, and it made their shells very brittle, didn't it? And so the mama bird sat on the shell, and the shell cracked. So we began to, even though the word was not in itself new, we began to say, you know, we need to take a better look at what we're doing here to our environment, because we're not only killing them, we're killing ourselves. And so this science was born, and so you began to hear songs like this from Marvin Gaye.
There's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Hey, 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 Father, we don't need to escalate. See, war is not the answer, 'cause only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Oh, oh, oh. Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on, what's going on, yeah, what's going on, oh, what's going on. Everybody thinks we're wrong. Judge us simply 'cause our hair is long. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Oh, oh. Picket lines, picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see, oh, what's going on, what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on, what's going on.
That sound like it?
Whoa, oh, mercy, mercy me. All things ain't what they used to be, no. When all the blue skies go, poison is the wind that blows from the north and south. Oh, oh, mercy, mercy me. All things ain't what they used to be, no. Rain on the ocean, all seas. Fish with no body. Oh, mercy, mercy me. Oh, things ain't what they used to be. Radiation underground and in the sky, and of course some birds live nearby die.
Well, not only the relationships between us and our environment, but right at the late 60s, songs start coming out that I call anti-commitment songs. Relationships. The end of traditional values as we understand it in terms of relationships, right? And one young man who performed what is probably one of the classics of this genre was a crossover. He was also a studio guitar player and later crossed over and became a major star, Glenn Campbell, with this particular song, which if you listen to the lyrics and you look at the lyrics, it's really an anti-commitment song as far as relationships are concerned, right? You'll know what I'm talking about.
It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag roll up and stash behind your couch. And it's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds and the ink stains that have dried upon some line. That keeps you on the back roads by the rivers of my memory. It keeps you ever gentle on my mind. You're not clinging to the rocks and ivy planted on the columns now that bind me. Or someone said because they thought we'd fit together walking. It's just knowing that the world will not be cursing or forgiving when I walk along the railroad track and find that you're moving on the back roads by the rivers of my memory, and for hours you're just gentle on my mind.
End of this period of time, and in the breakup of the Beatles, we can actually kind of see it. Just how the darker themes and behaviors are beginning to emerge. You know, the Rolling Stones are doing songs that basically deal with the topic of suicide, right? And people feeling this way. And you know, they're not hiding it anymore. Even for example, on the Ed Sullivan Show, you know, there's Jim Morrison with the Doors, and they're singing "Light My Fire." And I think you might recall me telling that story of how, maybe I didn't, but Jim Morrison was told by the producer, because this is a family show, in their song that they were singing, "Light My Fire," do not sing the word higher. You have to change that, because some people would interpret it as a drug song. So the band went on, and typical Jim Morrison, they sang the song as written. And you can see it. Go on Google, go YouTube it, and it's right there. Yeah, Jimmy.
Did you know that Jim Morrison grew up here?
That's right. There's a sign right on US 1.
And he's buried in Paris. He should have brought his body back here where he actually grew up.
He actually grew up there, right.
Melbourne.
The son of a Navy admiral, as a matter of fact. But Morrison, the producer in the Ed Sullivan Show, was furious. He says, "You promised. We had you booked for 3 more shows." And the band's looking at each other like, "Oh gosh, what did we do?" And Jim Morrison, in typical Morrison fashion, he said, "Man, he said, the producer said, you will never do the Ed Sullivan Show again, ever." And Jim Morrison said, "Man, we just did the Ed Sullivan Show." Meaning, of course, we've already made it, right? So, you know, these kinds of darker behaviors, even the Rolling Stones, but the Rolling Stones then agreed, unlike Jim Morrison, even though some of their songs tended to be kind of dark and, you know, kind of lewd, like "Let's Spend the Night Together." They weren't supposed to sing that. You can't sing that. That was a couple of years earlier. So, all right, the band agreed, we will sing "Let's Spend Some Time Together." And when you watch the video, and you can go Google it, and it's right there, right, you can see Mick Jagger singing this song, "Let's Spend Some Time Together," and as he sings the lyric, he's rolling his eyes in disgust, right? But again, these are the conflicts, these are the tensions over here. And, you know, you see other things too, Eastern mysticism, because people are rejecting Western religion and turning to Eastern mysticism, to Hinduism and transcendental meditation. Again, trying to find truth somewhere else. But again, many of those then would then come to the Jesus revolution that was occurring in the Jesus people. There's a recent movie put out, as a matter of fact, on that very topic, not too long ago.
Get better, 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 better. La 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 la. Go ahead, la 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 la. Hey Jude.
We all know these words.
Right. La 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 la. Hi, Davey.
Come on, Donald. La 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 la.
Hey Jude. Na 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 na.
Doug's got it.
Na 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 na. Hey Jude. That's it. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Hey Jude. Jude, 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 Jude. Jude, 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 Jude. Na 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 na. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jude. Na 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 na. These hands are making na 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 na. Hey Jude.
Take it away, Doug.
Jude, 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 Jude. These hands are making better. Just a minute now. Just a minute. Na 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 na.
Na na na.
Hey Jude. Now just the women.
Just the women.
Na 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 na. Hey Jude. All right, everybody together now. Let's go. Na 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 na. Hey Jude. Na na na. Hey Jude.
Dude. Dude? Dude?
Na na na. Na 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 na. Hey Jude.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Oh, no mama. No mama. Oh, no mama. Oh, yay, 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 yay. Ooh.